Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us once again on the State of Freedom.
The State of Freedom is a listener-supported podcast. We're committed to pursuing the truth about policymaking, decisions, and situations in Louisiana and at the national level that stand to impact our freedoms.
Please become a monthly supporter of the State of Freedom at freedomstate.us as we continue to expand the voice of liberty across Louisiana and beyond.
Fuego, it's just unbelievable. Whether it's the flame-grilled carne asada or a signature mango margarita, I had one of those too. They're serving up a literal feast of freedom at Calle Fuego. It's just extraordinary. I love the owners, Andres and Jose. They run such a great restaurant. The service is extraordinary. The atmosphere is great. So if you're in Pineville and the Alexandria area or passing through, or if you live there, go to Calle Fuego and tell them the State of Freedom sent you.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the State of Freedom, where we are grounded in faith in the Constitution, and we are committed to giving voice to the truth, to living with courage and taking action. It is Thursday, February 19th. It's 10 a.m. Central. Feels like Friday for some reason. Not really sure. Not really convinced that it's actually Thursday, but here we are. I'm Danielle Walker, and I am joined by my friend and co-host, the watchdog and chief of Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, Chris Alexander. Good morning, Chris. How are you?
Well, good morning, Danielle. I think if I were any better this morning, I'd have to float myself across a pond on a Valentine's Day card.
Well,
that's
awesome.
Pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
We are coming to you all live on Voice of the People USA TV and radio network on Rumble, X, YouTube, and Facebook. Wherever you're watching us, give us a thumbs up, give us a like. You can also always catch us later on our audio-only podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcast. Well, supposed to be joining us today is Commissioner of Insurance Tim Temple, but he is stuck in the legislature. He's testifying this morning, and I'm not really sure on what, because the legislature is not officially in session, but there must be some hearings that he's taking part in, and it seems that they have run over.
Yeah, they tend to hold you hostage down there.
Yeah,
when you're testifying. So
yeah,
we'll have a lot of good insurance things to talk about nonetheless. Very interested to hear from consumers in Louisiana and what they're seeing as far as reduction of their insurance rates.
Yeah, and we'll see. I mean, he may join. If he joins, he'll probably call. He'll join by phone after he gets out of the hearing room. So anyway, we'll play this by ear. We're going on a wing and a prayer this morning. But let me read the scripture of the day and get us off on the right foot. It is 2 Timothy chapter 2, verses 3 through 5. And it says, overcome every form of evil as a victorious soldier of Jesus, the Anointed One. For every soldier called to active duty must divorce himself from the distractions of this world so that he may fully satisfy the one who chose him. An athlete who doesn't play by the rules will never receive the trophy, so remain faithful to God. And don't we live in a time of limitless distractions? But the Lord calls us to be disciplined in our thoughts, in our words, and in our actions. The only way we can do that is to keep our eyes focused on Him, to be sure of who He says we are and what we're called to do. If we're confident in that, if we're confident of who we are in Christ, the assignment that He's given us, we're able to push aside distractions. It's when we lose sight of Jesus, when we lose sight of our identity in Him, and when we lose sight of our calling, that distractions and misalignment and worry can overtake us. So let me encourage us all today. Let's be disciplined in our pursuit of the Lord so the rest of our lives can follow the order and identity and anchoring certainty that being in His daily presence brings.
Excellent. And you know what, Danielle? We're not playing by the world's rules.
That's right.
We're playing by God's rules. And we have to remember that. We're not ultimately putting our faith in man. We're putting our faith in God, and His rules are very different from the rules of the world. And so stay focused on Him, make sure that our motives are pure, and we'll continue to chart this path with excellence and with the virtue that God expects us to do. And so, yeah, that is very, very powerful. It is so easy, Danielle, to get distracted in this world, and usually the distractions are things that simply waste our time.
Yeah.
We have a limited amount of time, and we have to make sure that we're using it wisely and ultimately for the glory of God and to build the kingdom of God right here on earth every day in everything that we do.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. Well, we were talking about insurance all morning, obviously, getting ready for this show. And we have a lot of opinions on insurance. I don't know if we have a whole lot of facts other than the bills that keep coming in the mail or our email. But I'm wondering if the listeners, Chris, have seen any changes in their auto or home insurance since we've last talked to Commissioner Temple. I know
Yeah.
he's been dealt a tough set of cards, but to be fair, I mean he took this job on so that he could help the ratepayers in Louisiana.
Yeah. And the bottom line, Danielle, is whether or not, let's just take auto insurance, which is a huge beast in Louisiana. The bottom line is whether or not Louisiana consumers are seeing a measurable reduction in their auto insurance rates. That's the bottom line. I mean, we can talk a lot about different things that we're doing. We can say that, it's going to be a while before purported legislative reforms uh, are quantified as far as our premiums are concerned. But the bottom line is, what relief are insurance consumers seeing? The
Yeah.
commissioner approved an auto rate decrease for State Farm. He approved an auto rate decrease for Progressive. Yet a lot of the Louisiana citizens that I'm talking to are actually seeing their auto insurance premiums increase at renewal. So the question is, how many policyholders are actually seeing a dollar for dollar reduction in their auto insurance rates? It is the question. And if they're not seeing those reductions, why? And when do these reforms begin to be shown and seen empirically in reduced insurance rates? That's what Louisianans are concerned about, Danielle. That's the bottom line, because they're
Yeah.
being crushed under, and it's not only auto, it's property rates as well, but specifically auto rates. Well, just would like to know from our listeners and from our supporters, who is seeing a reduction in their actual auto insurance rates,
Yeah.
because that is something I'm sure the commissioner would want to know. And he's not here now, so we don't really have his data to go by. Our information is anecdotal, based upon things that we're hearing from actual consumers. So I think that is the $64 million question, Danielle, right there.
Yeah. And Chris, you and I have spent a lot of time specifically around any issues related to our vehicles, um, kind of beating the drum for personal liberties, right? I mean, we have really focused over the last couple of years on that cockroach bill that ultimately passed last year, that allows for you to maybe not be pulled over for talking on your cell phone, but if you are pulled over for speeding and you happen to have been talking on your cell phone, then you can get a ticket for that too, right? So there have been significant pieces of legislation related to the way that we live and operate our vehicles that really stand to impede civil liberties. And there's another one this session, and I think you have spotted it, Chris. I saw it yesterday. I wanted to bring it up and get your thoughts on it. Representative Dixon McMakin has filed a bill that would make it a felony, the felony crime of speeding. What do you think about that, for going 30 miles over the speed limit? Now, if you are, I'm not advocating for people to go 30 miles over the speed limit, but I'm certainly not advocating for someone to go to jail if, if there's not proper signage in that area, or, I don't know, people, you can just kind of lose track of thought. And if you're supposed to, I don't know, Chris, I just don't like the idea of someone being given a felony for that.
Let me tell you why this is horrible, Danielle. Right now, if a person is speeding and that speeding violation goes on their driving record, their insurance rates are hiked very significantly, even dramatically, for one speeding violation that goes on their record. This is why it's always very important to try, when you get a speeding violation, to get it reduced to a non-moving so it's not reported to your insurance company. Because if it is, and I can tell you based on my own personal experience, your insurance rates are going to go up very significantly. So imagine if not only do you have a speeding violation that goes on your driving record, but you also have a felony prosecution,
Can you
criminal
imagine?
prosecution for that, because you're going 30 miles an hour over the speed limit. We're not talking about an accident here, Danielle. We're talking about someone on the interstate, driving down the interstate, that's going 30 miles an hour over the speed limit. So you're prosecuted for a felony in that case. Obviously, that gets reported to your insurance company. What do you think is going to happen to your insurance rates at that point?
Yeah.
This is extraordinarily horrible
And it's
legislation.
and it's
But
not and Chris, you could be pulled over for recklessness if you were endangering other people. There are any number of other tickets or ways that you could be, I mean, you'll get a big honking ticket if you're going 30 miles over the speed limit, let's be real.
exactly. There are already uh, quasi-criminal penalties associated with traffic violations, moving violations, careless operation, reckless operation. Obviously the speeding itself. There's a lot of red meat for insurance companies to go after here to raise someone's rates for traffic violations. The last thing that we need to do is categorize driving 30 miles over the speed limit as a felony criminal matter. It's not.
No,
And
and we have a lot of problems in this state, Chris, and I'm not sure this is where we should be focusing our energy as a state.
that's exactly right. I mean, look at the issues that we're facing in this state right now. Look at the issues with the carbon capture and sequestration, with the oppressive insurance rates,
With
with
DEI still in the schools.
the DEI still permeating our public institutions, despite proclamations to the contrary from the Board of Regents, the chairman of the Board of Regents. And by the way, Danielle, as of a week ago, there is a formal investigation by the U.S. Department of Education into the funding of the Board of Regents, because they're not at all convinced that diversity, equity, and inclusion funding has been purged from the executive budget. By no means. And
Great.
so I say that to say this. So we have all these issues that we're dealing with in Louisiana that cause people so much anxiety, and yet you're going to add to that source of anxiety the possibility that a speeding ticket can result in a felony criminal prosecution.
Yeah.
So you have not only the criminal matter, but you have the idea that your insurance rates can go up even more than they are right now. I don't understand where this comes from. It only seems to benefit big insurance companies. It certainly doesn't benefit Louisiana consumers. And I think it's a horrible piece of legislation. And I hope that this does not even get out of committee. I hope it dies in committee, because that's where it should end up.
Yeah.
It should suffer an ignominious death in committee.
If getting rid of our inspection stickers somehow is able to be killed in committee, but this gets through, I'll be super, super angry, Chris.
Well, exactly. And we're going to go on record very emphatically opposing this legislation, but it's being brought by my rep, Dixon McMakin, who at this point has a pattern, frankly, of bringing legislation that is not only not in the best interest of Louisiana consumers and citizens, but downright bizarre
Yeah.
in some ways.
Yeah.
But we're not here to talk about Dixon McMakin's legislation other than this one. the with regard to the insurance here, we want to know if people's auto premiums are going down. I also wanted to mention, Danielle, that while the commissioner of insurance is touting, and again, maybe there is a legitimate basis for this, touting auto insurance decreases. Hopefully that is occurring, but he recently approved a significant increase in homeowners policies for State Farm. I think up to about 10% in homeowners insurance, which is crushing Louisiana citizens right now. So if auto insurance rates are on the downward trajectory, which we don't know if that is actually the case or not, why are property insurance rates on the increase, at least with respect to the approval for State Farm recently?
Yeah.
And I know, Danielle, you and I had a chance to talk this morning about your property insurance rates. I know ours are exorbitant, and so why are those going up?
Yeah. And Chris, would you? I see in the chat, Katie she really wants us to talk about digital bill of rights, but I think we can get to that at the end, but I do want to cover some more insurance stuff before we get to that.
Sure.
Would you talk about what happened last session with the getting rid of comparative fault? Because I think people just need to be reminded of that. And it is a way that you have really felt, I believe, that insurance rates will go down.
Yeah,
Or
I really
should go down.
sure. Traditionally in Louisiana, Danielle, we have what's called comparative fault in accident cases, and it's not just car wrecks; it's any kind of accident or injury, where a person who's injured can recover to the extent of the fault of the other person. So if the injured person is 49% at fault and the other person is 51% at fault, just hypothetically, the injured person can recover damages commensurate with their percentage of fault. So if the total claim is worth $10,000 and they're 49% at fault, they recover around $5,000, which is consistent with their degree of liability and their degree of fault. Well, legislation passed last session. I think it was Representative Emily Chenever's bill, which has taken us now to pure comparative fault, which basically means that if an injured person is 51% or more at fault in causing an accident, they recover nothing. They don't get to recover 49% of their damages. They recover nothing. And this will and very well should result in millions and millions of dollars being saved by insurance companies. Now, if they're going to be saving that kind of money because of this kind of overhaul of the tort accident system in Louisiana, then that should be reflected in reduced rates, reduced premiums on the part of their policyholders. In other words, what have the insurance companies committed or promised in exchange for this protection? I mean, this is a massive shift in consumer rights in Louisiana. So what have the insurance companies promised or committed to in exchange for this protection? And when will this change in law be reflected in reduced insurance premiums? That is the $64 million question. It all comes back to the extent to which these purported reforms in our law have resulted in measurable relief for consumers and policyholders. Because if they haven't, we can talk all day long about these things that we're doing, and we can talk theoretically about what this should do or what that should do. But we need to see the evidence in terms of the relief felt by insureds and policyholders from these oppressive insurance rates that we face in Louisiana. That's the bottom line. And this law, this new pure comparative fault law, should definitely be reflected in reduced insurance rates, because we're talking about really what it comes down to, Danielle, is about a 50% less exposure by insurance companies per accident in Louisiana. Lawyers don't get
significant.
to go into court anymore and argue my client was only 49% at fault, or so he should be able to recover, or and it's just so that should be reflected in rates. That's really important. Otherwise, if it's not, then we need to go back to the comparative fault that we had before in Louisiana, where an injured party can still recover minus his degree of fault.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Well, and Chris, I know there was one other thing I wanted to bring up for sure, which is the wind mitigation incentives. And I can't recall exactly when the legislation was passed that made this possible. But I will say that people down here where I live in Terrebonne have seen, I would call it meaningful discounts from their insurance company on their homeowners insurance as a result of pursuing these wind mitigation incentives. So they're not automatic like anything. Of course, they're not automatic. Why would they do that? But for people who have recently rebuilt their home due to storms, or people who are doing renovations or fortifying their homes, there are some pretty significant discounts that you can get as a result of legislation that was recently passed and is now enacted. And if people are interested in that, I just have it pulled up here how they can pursue it. The first thing they need to do is contact their insurer or their insurance agent to check available discounts, and it's called I'm pretty sure it's called the wind mitigation incentives.
Is that on that's on the website?
It should be on Department of Insurance, and then you may need to get a certified inspector to come out and check your home to approve it to say that it meets the standards set out, and that's called a wind mitigation survey, and then you file a form. And then once you get approved, a discount should come through for you. So I want to make sure that people are aware of that, because I know at least down here, in homeowners insurance rates have just gone through the roof. They're absolutely crushing people. They're pushing people out of their homes, honestly, Chris. And so it's important that people know of every opportunity available for them to lower those rates.
Yeah. And one thing, Danielle, that was a big source of conflict in the last session that the governor suggested was going to reduce insurance rates in Louisiana was the bill, I believe it was HB 148 by Representative Jeff Wiley, that essentially confers complete untethered authority on the Commissioner of Insurance to either reject excessive rate hikes or reduce insurance rates, and even retroactively, even going back years to do that. And the interesting thing about the bill was that there is no requirement that in doing that, the Commissioner of Insurance has to base his calculation on any sort of quantifiable data. Any sort of accepted metrics in the industry. So what this is essentially the Commissioner of Insurance in Louisiana is basically a czar now in the state of Louisiana. Essentially can do whatever he wants to do regarding insurance rates without any accountability and with no requirement that what he does be based on quantifiable data in the industry. This, Danielle, is a recipe for political corruption in the state of Louisiana. There's no doubt about it. This is the very reason why Commissioner Temple was opposed to this legislation, even though it confers on him a significant amount of power. And I will guarantee you that insurance companies who may want to come do work in Louisiana look at this. They look at the history of corruption in our state. I think we had a former commissioner of insurance who actually was indicted and went to prison for corruption in the insurance office. And they look at this and they say, well, so there's nothing to stop the insurance commissioner from engaging in punitive action against us. Maybe we supported another candidate in the race. Maybe we, or for whatever reason, we are at odds institutionally with the commissioner of insurance, and under this law, he has the ability to punish us for that. I
Yeah.
guarantee you, insurance companies are looking at this very skeptically. They do not like the idea of any one individual, particularly in this case, the commissioner of insurance, having this type of untethered power to do essentially whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
And, that's why Commissioner Temple was opposed to it. Now, I don't know that we've seen any legislation so far this session to roll that back, but that has got to be fixed at some point.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. And I agree with you. And Commissioner Temple's been very vocal about the difficulty that this bill now act has caused him as commissioner in terms of being able to attract new insurance companies to the state. And
Danielle, you understand the reason. You're exactly right. You understand the reason why this was brought.
yeah,
Because if we come to a point where it's obvious to Louisiana citizens that these purported insurance reforms have not resulted in measurable decreases in their rates and in their premiums, guess who gets to be blamed for that?
right.
Commissioner Tim Temple. You had the power, Commissioner Temple. We gave you the power to do whatever you wanted to do, to reduce rates, to increase rates. You had the power to protect Louisiana consumers, and you failed to do it, so it's all your fault. That's what this bill was about. Whereas Commissioner Temple's position is that the market should govern rates primarily. And the insurance commissioner, unless they're absolutely arbitrary, absolutely egregious, the commissioner should not be intervening and deciding who wins and who loses in a private market. That's Commissioner Temple's position. And I agree with him on that. What we need to be doing are taking real steps to make the market one that insurance want to do business in,
Yeah.
instead of arbitrarily reducing or hiking rates based upon the arbitrary decision of a given commissioner of insurance. That's what we should be doing.
Yeah, and a couple points on that, Chris. One, the legislature, by giving this kind of power, is really working with the same socialistic mindset of Zoran Mondami, who thinks that he can just freeze rent prices and thinks that he can just make people charge less money for groceries. Like, that's completely insane. That's not how the real world works. So no, you can't do that. And trying to institute those kinds of policies makes it very clear that this legislature, in large part, not everyone, of course, this was not a unanimous vote, so I don't want to cast too wide a net, but does not understand the basic principles of market dynamics.
Exactly. That's very well said, Danielle. When you start talking about the government toying with the private market, whether it's the commissioner of insurance or anybody else, it is contrary to what we believe as conservative constitutionalists who believe in private enterprise and who believe in capitalism. And that's why this bill was bad. That's why it was a bad bill. And to be honest with you, I'm not really concerned about Commissioner Temple misusing this authority. I'm concerned about who comes after him.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about who comes next. And again, you cannot put this kind of unchecked power in the hands of one executive agency. It is a recipe for socialism, ultimately. You're right.
Yeah. And another thing I want to bring up, Chris, and Katie's in the chat saying about the digital bill of rights. I think what her point is that maybe the wind mitigation incentive is a perfect example of posting on social media is so important that people know. She's saying that trying to find announcements on agency websites are completely ridiculous and important information seems hidden. This should all be posted on social media where people actually are. And I agree with her. I think there's a couple of aspects to digital rights of citizens that do need to be brought forward, and maybe we need to be thinking about who would be a good person to try and carry that kind of transparency bill. I think the gentleman who carried the bill that would make Secretary of State Nancy Landry's office have to publish things, maybe could go back and do some amendments to make it more clear that this needs to be on social media where the people are. But one
There
thing
is a bill, Danielle, by the way, there is
is
a
there?
bill that I saw, and I can't remember who the author is, but we will make sure that we lay all of this out soon with regard to our legislative agenda. But there is a bill, I think, that was pre-filed that requires any public agency to provide detailed accounts, agenda, calendar scheduling of all public meetings or all meetings before that agency upon request
Come
by
on.
by a citizen. Now that doesn't,
That doesn't cut it.
that doesn't cut it. You shouldn't have to request it. You should be able to go
We're
to their
supposed to
website.
divine that they're going to have a meeting.
Exactly.
Come on.
Or does everybody have to sit down and send a request to every public agency in Louisiana and say, I want a detailed agenda, please, send it to me? That's not the case. This is a government of, by, and for the people. Everyone should be able to go to their website and be able to see very clearly in specific detail when they're having meetings, what the subject of the meeting is, the time of it, and all of that. We should
Yeah.
not be left in the dark with regard to the activities of public agencies that directly affect our lives.
Yeah.
That's their responsibility. It's not ours.
Well, that's right. I think there's a lot that can be said about a potential digital bill of rights when it comes to the rights of citizens with respect to the reporting of the government. And one of those things, Chris, is the protection of our data. I mean, have we ever legislatively addressed how the government should be protecting our data? We've seen the OMV breach cause untold damage to people having their social security numbers and private information exploited. And another thing that is kind of connected to this topic of insurance and digital rights is something that we talked about last session, and I believe it was Representative Edmund Jordan's or Jordan Edmund. Anyway, you'll correct me. I'm probably not getting his name right, but the bill that said that your dealership, when you bring your car in for service, they cannot take the data from your transmitter, whatever it is in there. They can't take all of the data of your vehicle and sell it to insurance companies so that you will have to pay higher rates because your insurance companies are actually spying on you through the dealership in your car without us knowing about it. That is absolutely insane. And people not only need to know about that, which I don't think very many people are aware, but we need to put a stop to that nonsense.
And we're not talking, Danielle, about it is Edmund Jordan, and he did bring that bill. It was a good bill, and the bill failed. But we're not talking about situations where there's an accident involved.
No.
We're not talking about situations where someone was cited for speeding or for reckless operation. We're talking about internal data that is available to insurance companies that they believe is evidence of increased risk, whether you stopped too quickly, whether you accelerated too fast, whether you were speeding in a certain zone, whatever. No,
and companies
accident.
are making money off of this data, which is so disgusting. I don't know if anyone's gone shopping for a new car lately, but car prices are absolutely insane. And these companies want to also exploit you by taking your data, charging another company for it, selling it without your knowledge to insurance companies so that they can also profit off of the back of your information, off of your data? I don't think so.
And there's no liability. There's no accident. And yet they're still looking for ways to increase your insurance rates. And I think it is horrendous that manufacturers would be able to sell this information, this metadata, to insurance companies so that they can justify raising your rates even more. Even when there's no accident, there's no liability whatsoever.
That's spying.
It is spying, and it gets into constitutional issues. You're exactly right, Danielle. It's really a constitutional infringement. The government and insurance companies do not have a right to get inside of your vehicle and determine whether or not you are whether or not you're speeding, whether or not you're braking too hard, whether or not you passed in a no passing zone, things like that, where there's
Yeah.
no accident that results from it. They don't have
Yeah.
a right to all that information. Just like under the Fourth Amendment, if a person is sitting in their home and they say they have marijuana in their home, the government does not have a right arbitrarily to go into their home without probable cause to believe that there is an act of criminality going on there. They don't get to go in there, on a hunch. And this is the kind of thing, I think this is an invasion of privacy, and it is going to result in a windfall to insurance companies,
Hey,
which is the
Chris,
last thing that we need.
your picture has been frozen for a minute or two. Maybe you want to hit refresh and you might have to come back real quick.
Oh, hold on one second. And get on here.
All right. It looks like we have you back.
Oh, back on?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Great. Yeah, and the chat makes a great point that we lost him, but the chat makes a great point that we are being tracked by social media. We're being tracked by our phones. Here we go. All right, Chris, you back in action?
Sorry about that, Danielle. Sorry about that. When you're making good points and your observations are singularly trenchant, the devil will come in and try to cut you off, but he can't cut us off.
That's right. I was just saying that the chat had a great point about we're being tracked by so many, by our devices. We're being tracked by social media. Of course we are. And I think that's something that also needs to be addressed, because I don't think that Facebook needs to know if I go into Target, or Facebook doesn't need to know if I choose to get tank up at one place versus another. They don't, those companies don't need to know my whereabouts at all times.
Exactly. So it's very important that, we always remember it's a constitution that we're protecting. And, Danielle, and there have been a number of bills that you and I have talked about before, where our legislature has passed laws, been signed by the governor, that constitute a clear and unacceptable violation of core freedoms, core constitutional rights. One is the exit poll bill,
Yeah.
that horrible bill that was passed, that discriminates against private citizens. That to me will rank up there as at the very top of my list of bad legislation and horrible public policy in Louisiana. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But Danielle, speaking of insurance rates, you have Allstate and other companies, and they talk about how they're barely making it, but yet you mentioned the Super Bowl. I want to hear about that.
Well, this is something this is a pet peeve of my dad for sure. So we know down in South Louisiana, and Chris, even a little further north of I-10 anyway, that Allstate is pretty notorious for not paying payouts. What do you call those things? Claims.
Claims.
Sorry. Yeah, they're pretty notorious for not paying claims. And they're super stingy when it comes to giving people what they deserve in times of crisis, right? But then you go and you watch the Super Bowl, and there is countless millions of dollars being flashed on the screen with the word Allstate all over it. And it really, really leaves people wondering, well, I wonder, why, how is Allstate spending all this money if it doesn't have any money? If Allstate can't make its bills, why is it such a large sponsor of the Super Bowl? It's a good question, I think.
I think that's a very, very good question. And if they have, the excess money out there, maybe they should be passing those savings down to their policyholders and their insurance.
I don't think, if you think about it, have you ever looked at a Super Bowl sponsor and been like, you know what, maybe I'm going to check out the rates of Allstate. What would be more beneficial for Allstate is to lower their rates, pay out their claims. Then their word of mouth will be so wild that they won't even need to do much advertising. To me, that's just the truth.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I just think that is so interesting, Danielle, that you bring that up. I'd be curious to know how much money Allstate spent on the Super Bowl.
I bet Grok can
Guarantee
tell
you
us.
it
Do you want
would.
me to find out?
Yeah. See if you could find out how much money Allstate spent directly or indirectly on the Super Bowl.
Ooh, sorry, 1 second. I lost my screen here. Okay. Let's see what it says. Oh, it did not run any ads. 0 on airtime. Okay, hold on though. Maybe. Okay, let's see. Well, look at that. I feel like I'm being caught short here, Chris. They must not have sponsored it this year. They spent 0 on airtime for a commercial in the game broadcast. I thought they had some. I thought I saw their name out there.
Well,
Allstate
your point is
slashed ad
still
spend by about 30 to 31% in 2023. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, for context, a 30-second Super Bowl ad spot in 26 cost an average of about $8 million, with some premium slots reaching 10 million plus, which can push the total well over to 10 to 20 million for a full campaign. So Allstate wasn't in there, but Geico and others may have been. So
yeah.
anyway, the
So
point remains.
your
They
point
have,
your point
yeah.
is your point is still very well taken. One other thing, Danielle, that Commissioner Temple has brought up before and emphasized is claim counts. The
Yeah.
fewer people who are filing claims in accidents, the better. So we need, fewer accidents, fewer claim counts, and he has talked about the importance of that. So what I'd like to know, and I don't know if there's any stats out yet. We're only in late February, but whether or not so far there's a downward trajectory as far as the number of accident injury claims being filed, and also maybe some statistics on uh, the percentage of people who are involved in accidents that are still immediately going to see a lawyer rather than trying to handle the claim directly with the
Yeah.
carrier. I think those are things that are important and directly correlate with our rates.
Yeah, when we had Commissioner Temple in Homa last year, We the People Bayou Community hosted him for a luncheon, and he pointed to a downward trajectory, and he did caveat it, saying that the week of the snowstorm last year literally just stopped every vehicle. So all wrecks stopped because no one was driving, and so he couldn't point to that as being an organic downward trajectory that would continue. But he did have reason to believe that we would see at least a modest decrease, if not, maybe that would probably be like, not a fair representation of the trajectory. So
Yeah,
we'll
yeah,
see.
exactly. That might have been an aberration
Yeah,
because of the weather.
yeah,
You're
exactly.
saying, yeah. Well, as we said at the outset here, Danielle, the bottom line is, when you really tear it all down to the essential, are Louisiana consumers, whether it's their property insurance, whether it's their auto rates, their homeowners insurance, are they seeing relief based
Right.
upon the, purported legislative reforms that were enacted, and not just in 2025, in 2024 also, because Commissioner Temple has talked about those, and he talked about the fact, and we understand this, by the way, that it takes time for those uh, reforms to be quantified in the market. We
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
But Louisiana citizens are the ones who are going to be able to say whether or not they're seeing real relief, and if they're not, then we need to know why. And if they are, then obviously that is a good thing because, as you said, Danielle, people are being crushed here with
Yeah.
these rates. And I guarantee you that's a big part of the reason why people are moving to Texas, people are moving to Florida, people are moving to
Yeah.
Tennessee. There is a very significant migration south because of all of the wonderful cultural things that the South offers people. We're proud Southerners. Why is it that Louisiana seems to be one of the very few states that people are not migrating to? You don't think that has something to do with the issues we've been talking about here today? I think it
Yeah,
does.
it does. It has a lot to do with ridiculous regulation. It has a lot to do with insurance. It has a lot to do with the schools. So far, I mean, we know the schools are improving, but is it enough to say, okay, I'm going to come and set my family up here in a place where taxes are off the charts and insurance is off the charts? We have to make meaningful difference. We have to see real change in these areas. And frankly, I think education's leading the way through Superintendent Cade Brumley. I know he's doing an excellent job, but education alone is not going to save the population of this state. We people need to be able to afford to live here.
Absolutely. And you're right about Cade Brumley, Danielle. He has, despite a lot of forces that are operating against him, he has kept his eye on the ball and
Yeah.
really achieved some measurable reforms in our education system in Louisiana. I've got enormous respect for Cade Brumley.
Yeah.
I think he's a real man of principle. And I think his desire really is, his heart is a heart of public service. No
Yeah.
question about it. I want to mention one bill from last session, Danielle, on the insurance that I think
Okay.
sort of anecdotally, I think it sort of represents the cutting around the edges here in Louisiana when it comes to insurance reform and when it comes to really tackling the issues that are causing the problems. There was a bill last session that I think was a good bill as far as it went by Representative Gabe Furman, and it was a bill that would prohibit anybody who's in Louisiana illegally from recovering in any type of accident case,
Yeah.
even if the other person was at fault, and even if the illegal immigrant had insurance. Okay, so but if they're here illegally, they do not get to recover uh, damages for emotional distress or non-economic damages at
Yeah.
all because they're here illegally, and that's where really the big bulk of damages in these types of cases comes in in the emotional distress area where you can argue for the moon and there's no
Yeah.
real way to quantify it. So if you can argue successfully that a person has suffered significant loss of enjoyment of life or significant emotional distress because of an accident caused by another, then obviously that translates into big dollars. But this bill would prohibit illegal immigrants from being able to recover that. And I think it was a good bill as far as it went. But what percentage of claims every year on accident cases are filed by illegal immigrants? I would say it's a tiny, tiny fraction.
Yeah.
So I don't really think that is going to move the needle in terms of insurance reform or relief for the populace as a whole here in Louisiana. And I think that's one example of the sort of cutting around the edges that we do in the legislature, where we're not really addressing the core cultural, economic, and legal issues that are crippling us.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with you, Chris. I do. I think, it's the legislature has a funny way of tackling issues that are really non-issues or lesser issues. And then whenever brought face to face with massive issues of concern, like illegal immigrants or foreign adversaries being close to our military installations and our election machines being filled with software from basically communist China, they act like you are a freaking raving lunatic and tell you that you are making up issues that are not there. You're trying to advance a bill that is completely unnecessary, and you're also crazy. So the
Yeah.
gaslighting of this legislature And again, not everybody, right? We do have some really solid members of the legislature that
We
I want to
do.
give credit to. I don't want to paint a broad brushstroke, but I do have to say that the way that good legislation is gaslit and torched in front of your very eyes, and the way that meaningless or worse, freedom crushing legislation is completely slipped through or
Gutted.
or no, that freedom crushing
Oh, freedom
legislation
crushing. Yeah.
is just shoved through without debate or without any hesitation is not right.
Exactly. Look at the carbon capture and sequestration legislation, Danielle. Case in point of what you're talking about. Slipped through in the dead of the night, revolutionary, massive changes in Louisiana law, property rights, our public health, how billions of dollars of our tax dollars are going to be spent. That legislation allowing eminent domain by private companies slipped through in the dead of the night at the height of COVID, where nobody had an opportunity to protest or object to anything. This silly cell phone bill that went through that now allows the state to criminalize law-abiding citizens for talking on a handheld cell phone in their car, not talking about texting, not talking about looking at social media, talking about talking on your phone, now becomes a potential criminal offense that results in the transfer of more of your money to the government, more of your money to the state, as Mike Baham so eloquently said when he was objecting to this bill, calling it a revenue harvesting bill. You look at SB 80, you look at, as we talked about earlier, where ordinary law-abiding citizens are now prohibited in the state of Louisiana from conducting lawful exit polls at polling precincts, whereas CNN conglomerate, MSNBC, and people associated with a bona fide news organization can come in and have total freedom to conduct exit polls. Their free speech, their constitutional rights are fully honored in Louisiana, but regular Louisiana citizens' rights are crushed by this bill. You mentioned a minute ago the bill that Valerie Hodges brought about, foreign enemies owning land in Louisiana. Her bill that would allow the military to expropriate immovable property owned by a sworn foreign adversary if it's located within 50 miles of a military base or other critical infrastructure, gutted in a Senate committee by Comrade Greg Miller.
Yeah.
And I could go on and on and on about this, and it's so important. You're right, Danielle, your point. They will push through things that hurt our freedom while covertly and sometimes not so covertly killing bills that would enhance and protect our freedom. That's the problem.
And Chris, this is really, it kind of comes full circle to the scripture this morning. It comes back to an identity problem. Our legislature, the legislators who would want to crush our freedoms, have a misunderstanding of what their position is there for. They are there for to represent the interests of the people. They are there for maximizing liberty. They are there for protecting us against foreign adversaries. They are not there to tell us what to do. They are not there to tell us how to conduct our lives. They are not there to sell our property to foreign companies. They're not there for that. And I think I just would really appreciate a legislature that understood what they were there for. And some of them do. Some of them do. Like I've been saying, some of them do. But the ones that don't are the reason that we're in the position we're in.
Exactly. That's exactly right. They've forgotten what their duty is to the citizens.
Yeah.
You mentioned, Danielle, some good legislators. We've got some good legislators down there. The Chuck Owens, the Beryl Amedis, the Kathy Edmonstons, the Danny McCormicks, the
Ray Cruz.
The Ray Cruzes, the Shamerhorns, and there are some others, and that we know, and we have great relationships with them, and we applaud them for their efforts. But the body of legislators have forgotten who it is they're supposed to be serving. They've forgotten the fact that the only reason why they exist is to secure our basic rights. It's not their job to play big brother government. It's not their job to make decisions that we should be making for ourselves. And it's certainly not their job to go in there and allow themselves to become enriched in one way or another by deep pocketed special interest lobbyists who have an agenda that is very contrary to the agenda of ordinary Louisiana citizens across the state.
Yeah.
That's not their job, certainly. And so they should keep that in mind. I really believe I ought to send the legislators some of the writings in the Federalist Papers that outline what the core responsibility of government is, because they could do well to read those documents and understand what their job is.
Truly.
Because many of them are not honoring it, and I could go on and on with other bills. Let me give you one other example here, Danielle, on the insurance. There was a big bill last session, because the TV advertising by lawyers, I would 100% agree, is contributing to this culture of me, 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 me. And every time I'm in a car wreck or every time I'm in some kind of an accident, the first thing I need to do is go see a lawyer and see how much money they can get me. And the profligate advertising by the trial lawyers is definitely contributing to that.
Yeah.
But the bill, how you balance that with free expression, with free speech, is an issue that definitely has to be explored. But don't suggest that a bill that simply says you've got to put up in the top right corner of your ad that this is not a real client, this is, a paid spokesman for the law firm, is going to do anything to move the needle.
Right.
It's not. Most people are still not going to know that that's not a real client. Most people don't care whether that's a paid spokesman or a real client, whatever.
Well, the message is still getting out, right?
The message is still getting out. If you're in an accident, it doesn't really matter whether you were injured. It doesn't matter whether you have any real property damage. It doesn't matter what's right and what's wrong as a matter of principle and ethics. If you're in a wreck, come see me and we're going to see how much money we can get you. That is the culture in Louisiana. There's no question about it. And as long as that culture continues to exist, we're going to have a real problem with insurance rates in Louisiana. It's unfortunate, but that's where and all the billboards, every time you're on the interstate, there's more attorney advertising billboards for car wrecks on the interstate than there are blades of grass on the side of the interstate.
It's true. It's absolutely true.
So that's the culture. That's where we are. And you have said before, at bottom, a lot of this are cultural issues that maybe cannot be fully reformed or addressed through laws and through legislation. You remember what John Quincy Adams said, Danielle? He said, the Constitution and the rule of law is meant to govern a moral and ethical people.
That's right.
And ultimately, it will serve no other. So if we don't have a moral and ethical sensibility individually and collectively as a culture, it doesn't really matter ultimately how many laws you pass, because that is not going to solve the core problem.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chris. I was literally just thinking, but God, right? Like revival has to take place in Louisiana in order for us to get our insurance rates down.
Well, exactly. I mean, you're exactly right. But you have beat the drum on that this is a cultural and ultimately a spiritual battle in which we are engaged. And that's really a big part of the reason why I love the fact that we start every show with a scripture and a prayer. You remember, Danielle, when we started several years ago, there were a number of people, even people who purport to align with us spiritually and politically, who said, you've got a good podcast, but you need to nix the starting the show with the scripture because people are going to be turned off by that. And I'll never forget, I mentioned that to you, and you said, well, then I guess we're not going to have a podcast very long because we're not changing that. That's
Yeah.
never going to change. And that's one of the things I really like about you, Danielle. I got to tell you.
Well, I like that about you too, Chris, because you always back me up. And I appreciate that.
Love doing it.
I want to acknowledge some people in the chat here, Chris. Jim says that his own homeowner's insurance has increased $500 this year. Thanks for letting us know, Jim. You might want to shop around, but if you've already paid the $500, I'm not sure. But start shopping around for next year. I think that would be the advice Commissioner Temple would give. Although I don't know how much success other people have seen. I think my parents have gotten a little success from shopping around. Brian in the chat said that's what's happening in Webster Parish. Greed has created corruption, which has created the good old boy system. Yeah, we see that. 100%.
Excellent point, Brian.
Yeah,
and Jim, by the way, that's the one and only Jim Crumling.
Yes,
who has done so much over in Acadiana as an advocate going back many, many years. Great American, good friend. He had a show last night that I had a chance to chime in on. Anyway, I could go on and on about Jim. God bless you, Jim.
God bless you, Jim. And then Gwen says, absolutely, the culture is to sue. Yeah, we've got to get past that, and I pray that we can. I think we can. I know we can. Yeah, God's moving in Louisiana. Chris, a couple of announcements, unless you have any final thoughts.
Good.
On the political front, you're good? Okay. We will be back here on Tuesday. I don't know what the date on Tuesday is, but anyway, we'll be back here on Tuesday at 10 a.m. with Steve Jarvis. We'll be getting his perspective on the latest happenings with the Maha agenda. I think some big stuff broke this morning that he will be very fired up about. So you'll probably want to tune in for that. I think he's always a great guest. And then Wednesday on For the Love of Freedom next week, I will have Praying Medic back as my guest. We'll be talking about spiritual matters and current events as we usually do when he comes on. That'll be a great show. He's always got such great insight and great stories to tell. And then Thursday, I'm really looking forward to this, Chris. I actually haven't even told you yet, although it popped up on your calendar. A truly America First common sense candidate for governor of Texas will be joining us ahead of his primary. Doc Pete Chambers is coming on. And
I've heard of him.
Very good. Yeah, he is something else. I think he's maybe a former Green Beret. He is not no nonsense, and he's not taking any political crap from anybody. So you'll want to tune in for that. I think Louisiana stands to get inspired because that's the kind of person that we would want running our state.
You know, Danielle, there are great patriots cropping up all over the country, answering the call of revival, answering the call of constitutional reform in our government. And I feel very, very emboldened by what I see across the country as far as patriots who simply are not going to yield at the altar of the deep state, who are trying to squander and destroy our Constitution, create a global government. The United States is unique in all the world, and our Constitution is what makes us unique. And we're going to preserve it, and we're going to protect it, both here in Louisiana and nationally. Because if we don't have anything left. You know, Winston Churchill, Danielle, said that the constitutional Republican form of government is the worst in all the world, except for all the rest of them. And he was 100% right, and it's worth protecting. And I want to finish on this on my end, Danielle. If what you hear on the State of Freedom, the information you're getting, the inspiration you may get from our show, if you don't get that anywhere else, then you should share and subscribe to the State of Freedom today, right now, and share it with your friends, because we are rapidly expanding across the state and beyond. And imagine if our voice is heard in every corner of the state of Louisiana and everybody knows the name, the State of Freedom. We would change the complexion of political advocacy in Louisiana overnight, because we're bypassing the mainstream media that seems to arrogate to itself the right to determine what you can know, what you can't know, and in what form you're allowed to know it. That's not what the State of Freedom is about. We trust Louisiana citizens. We trust the American people that they can get the real facts and they can make proper decisions based upon real information and real facts. And that's what we're here for. So share and subscribe the State of Freedom and advertise on the State of Freedom. If you have a business or a nonprofit or just an idea that you would like to share, if we believe in you and believe in your ideas and in your business and in your nonprofit, we will promote you very enthusiastically, and we will get it out there to a loyal and rapidly growing body of listeners and viewers who trust us and trust our recommendations. So God bless everybody listening today. God bless the State of Freedom. God bless Louisiana. God bless the United States of America.
Yeah, amen, Chris. And I just want to add to that, for folks who feel like maybe they've been on the sidelines and maybe they haven't moved into the position that they need to be taking action in, the people who feel like, hey, I have a certain kind of expertise that I could lend to this fight. We want you to get involved. We absolutely want you to get involved. We need you to get involved. Your voice is important. Please do reach out to us, because we need people who understand how to read the state budget. We need people who understand the nuances of insurance legislation. We need people who understand what wildlife and fisheries regulations truly means for fishermen, for shrimpers, for hunters, for guides. This is critically important to the future of our state. And if you have a gift, if you have a skill that you can lend to the cause, we need you. We can't do this all ourselves. We're not doing this all ourselves, but we want you to join. So please reach out to either Chris or myself, and we would love to get you involved. You can get Chris at chris@lacag.org, and you can get me at Danielle at freedomstate.org, freedomstate.us, sorry. But we would love to partner with you. We would love to show you the ropes of the legislature. Chris does a great job of that. And we just need your voice and your insight.
I'd love to meet anybody down there, Danielle, anybody down at the legislature. Just send me an email. I'd love to meet you, show you around, and make you feel welcome. After all, Danielle, it is your house.
That's right.
It belongs to us. A lot of times when you walk down into the legislature, you feel like you're walking in to a cabal of enthusiastic cohorts that are determined to do things that are not in the best interest of Louisiana citizens. Sometimes it feels like a den of thieves down there when you go there. But remember, it's our house, and we have every right to reclaim it for ourselves because we are sovereign. And you talk, Danielle, about what people can do. One thing that people can do right now is share the State of Freedom today, now. And God bless you, Danielle. I don't know why it seems like the time always goes by so fast when I'm with you, but it's always a joy.
Well, I feel the same way, Chris. God bless you, and thank you for winging it with me today. I hope that people feel encouraged. I hope people feel fired up by what they heard, and we are steadily advancing toward the legislative session, so we need everybody to get involved.
Win, win, win. God bless.
That's right. God bless you.
Tigerland Properties. These are licensed professional realtors in Louisiana, commercial, residential, investments, whatever you choose to do. These people, whether you're buying, whether you're selling, whether you want to invest, these people are the best in the business. They really are. Tigerland Properties. Mainly, they work in the Boot area of Louisiana, down in South Louisiana, but truly, you could not be in better hands if you're buying or selling commercial, residential, or investing than Tigerland Properties. I encourage you to call them 225-320-3004. You'll want to make sure you're in good hands with commercial, residential, real estate, or investment, and they are the best. Blanco Brothers has been in business in Louisiana for about 30 years now. I have personal experience with this company, and I know others who have as well. If you have a business or a home and you've got roofing, gutter, sheet metal issues at all, one number you need to know, and that's Blanco Brothers Construction. He will treat you right financially, and he will take very good care of you with regard to the quality of the service that he provides. I cannot recommend Blanco Brothers Construction more highly enough. Memorize the number 225-226-4222. Blanco Brothers Construction, the very best in the business.
Thanks for joining us today on the State of Freedom. Any follow-up actions, resources, and links to our sponsors will be in the show notes. All calls to action can be taken at lacag.org. That's LACAG.org.
To learn more about our work, become a monthly subscriber, supporter, or advertiser at freedomstate.us. The State of Freedom, the #1 conservative podcast in Louisiana.